AMD, different, better, worse? Pat, what's your initial readout versus the Intel report?
No, I mean, listen, AMD came in with a meet. And some people said, hey, that EPS was, they missed EPS, and the guide didn't excite people. I mean, the street was not entertained. And it's so interesting as a company, data center. I'll just talk about the quarter and then I'll get a little commentary. Data center and client, they blew away expectations, right? Both EPYC and Instinct. Zen 5 is looking really good. There was a big Ryzen 9K channel fill, Ryzen AI, and growth in commercial with more enterprise wins. Gaming, totally get this. I do not understand why equity analysts have numbers on this. I mean, the console makers didn't create a new lower cost edition. We did see in the guide that gaming is going to be a lot better because you likely have Navi 4 coming in, but you also have some new console action. So on embedded, right? Like we've said, you've said, I've said, when it comes to embedded, what you should look at is quarter over quarter growth, right? Year over year is tough given that the market's in the toilet, right? We talked about Intel was down 44%, which is just astronomical, but quarter over quarter growth is the first step, which it did. Instinct forecast didn't seem to impress, going from 4.5 to 5. But I want to dial back a little bit here. People need to recognize that literally a year ago, AI went from $0 to what's going to be $5 billion. Very similar to the ramp that we saw with EPYC. But even steeper. If you look at the big customers they've pulled in, like Microsoft, Meta, Oracle, that's a really good start. The two, I don't want to call them laggards out there, but I will, are Amazon and Google. I do believe in the next 6 months we are going to see Amazon and Google latch onto AMD, probably AWS first. And I just I don't say that based on any inside information or conversations, but it's just inevitable in the way that Amazon works to be able to do that. So that's really the top level. I can't imagine anything less than I miss this, Dan. I'm kind of part of the problem on the expectations. I looked at them doing a full sweep of the hyperscalers, which they didn't, and I probably gave the company too much credit based on what the slides said in terms of performance. But then again, reality needed to set in. I think I called 10 billion at the beginning of the year. Even though they were like zero, just if nothing else, based on NVIDIA market share in capturing 10% of that, and the company's rocking inference capabilities. What I didn't factor in was the complexity of getting them into multiple customers and potentially even the ability to ship the volume, which I think right now is not an issue. And I do think that AMD has enough capacity to meet demand.
Yeah, Pat, look, so you hit a lot of this really, really well. AI was the number. The entire reaction was AI driven. The entire reaction was Instinct number driven. I know, we had the chance to sit with Lisa, and I think Lisa did a really good job of sort of helping both of us, kind of talked us both off the ledge a little bit, because I think we were both kind of like, how do you get to 100+ billion for NVIDIA here, that it's completely sold out here, that there's this tenable demand for AI and not see a bigger forecast rise. But this stuff does take time. And I like, really what I found most profound was kind of her overview, an acknowledgement of software. you and I talk about this. I mean, we heard Pat say it about Gaudi 3. We hear her say it about, like, they're making great progress with ROCm, but I mean, the CUDA head start is meaningful. The, situation in terms of getting customers to move faster. And of course, the battle isn't only on the hyperscale front. The battle has to be fought on the enterprise front, and that's where I think there's a big opportunity for everyone that's not NVIDIA to do pretty well. The Epic numbers were good. I mean, look, CPUs. I guess the death of the data center CPU has been maybe somewhat exaggerated, and that was indicated. And of course, I think they have an opportunity from a vertical positioning. The acquisition of ZT Systems, the build out of their front end and back end networking. And I mean, they are really sort of building a stack. It's not quite as much of what I call kind of a closed loop as what NVIDIA is doing, but it is sort of there is an inherent demand that will be based on selling their GPUs, their compute, their networking, and then building their rack scale. And I think that's where growth comes. And so I think it's a little bit of a delayed fuse. I think, of course, there's always, rationalization going on. I do think that, maybe 10 was too high, but I think people would have probably loved to see even six, like just something that felt a little bit more promising, but we're seeing the same thing everywhere. And Pat, we do have to weigh in that there's this big overall growth opportunity. We see a 30% CAGR at Futurum for this. I mean, she sees a 60% CAGR, so that's loaded up with opportunities with what AMD is seeing. I mean, you're hearing more about Broadcom chips, you're hearing more about Marvell chips. They're not Broadcom or Marvell, they're XPUs that are helped co-developed with those companies, to be clear, but they're coming out with AWS, Microsoft. OpenAI announced something this week, potentially. Meta is doing some of their own silicon. The Chinese companies are absolutely, going to do their best to try to build their own, silicon with the resources that they have. And so is that going to eat GPU market? I mean, I don't know that it's going to eat it, but I think, as you see, if you genuinely believe that the killer workload is inference and not training, which I think a lot of people do, the hardened sort of XPUs could be a really efficient way to get things done. And so these are all factors, but overall, Pat, I mean, look, it was good from AMD. I mean, it was a good result. But again, I think everybody's just kind of sitting on the ledge, wanting to hear big AI numbers. And even though it's the biggest, fastest ramping product they've ever had, NVIDIA has set an incredibly unreasonable bar for how fast things should grow. And so I want to hopefully put everybody out there that's listening to this kind of have a little bit of a ability to think about what AMD is doing, what AMD is building, and why it has some upside long term.